Sanatana Rupa Raghunatha Bhatta Juga Sri Jivaha Prabhu Lokhanatha Daya Koro Shri Acharya Prabhu Srinivas Ramachandra Sangamage Narottama Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya 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 Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda. Haribo, Haribo. Jaya Advaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Advaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna. So today we are studying Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 22. And we're going to read text 10 up to 15. Sevi binang sajiva duita prakara eka nitya mukta eka nitya sangsara. Translation: the living entities, the jivas, are divided into two categories. Some are eternally liberated and others are eternally conditioned. Nitya Mukta Nitya Krishna Charane Unmukha Krishna Parishada Nama Bunje Seva Sukha. Those who are eternally liberated are always awake to Krishna consciousness, and they render transcendental loving service at the feet of Lord Krishna. They are to be considered eternal associates of Krishna, and they are eternally enjoying the transcendental bliss of serving Krishna. Nitya Bandha Krishna Haite, Nitya Bahirmukha, Nitya Sangsara Bunje, Narakadi Dukha. Apart from the ever-liberated devotees, they are the conditioned souls who always turn away from the service of the Lord. They are perpetually conditioned in this material world and are subjected to the material tribulations brought about by different bodily forms in hellish conditions. Seidoshe Maya Pishachi Dandakare Tare Adhyatmika Ditapatraya Tare Jari Mare. Due to his being opposed to Krishna consciousness, the conditioned soul is punished by the witch of the external energy Maya. He is thus ready to suffer the threefold miseries brought about by the body and mind, the inimical behavior of other living entities, and natural disturbances caused by the demigods. And then text 14 and 15, where we're going to read the purport. Kama krodera dasaha hena taralati kaya brahmite yadi sadhuvaidya paya Tandra upadesha mantre Pishachi palaya Krishna bhakti payatabe Krishna nikatayaya. Word for word translation. Kama, of lusty desires. Krodera, and of anger. Dasa, the servant. Hena, becoming. Tara, by them. Latikaya, is kicked. Brahmite, wandering and wandering. Yadi, if. Sadhu, a devotee. Vaidya, physician. Paya, he gets. Tangra, his. Upadesha mantre, by instruction and hymns. Pishachi, the witch, the external energy. Palaya, flees. Krishna bhakti, devotional service to Krishna. Paya, obtains. Tabe, in this way. Krishna nikatayaya, he goes to Krishna. This is the translation by Srila Prabhupada. In this way, the conditioned soul becomes the servant of lusty desires. And when these are not fulfilled, he becomes the servant of anger and continues to be kicked by the external energy Maya. Wandering and wandering throughout the universe, he may by chance get the association of a devotee physician whose instructions and hymns make the witch of the external energy flee. The conditioned soul thus gets into touch with devotional service to Lord Krishna, and in this way he can approach nearer and nearer to the Lord. Purport. An explanation of verses 8 through 15 is given by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Amrita Pravaha Bhashya. The Lord is spread throughout the creation in his quadruple expansions and incarnations. Krishna is fully represented with all potencies in each and every personal extension. But the living entities, all those separated expansions, are also considered one of the Lord's energies. The living entities are divided into two categories: the eternally liberated and the eternally conditioned. Those who are ever liberated never come in contact with Maya, the external energy. The ever-conditioned souls are always under the clutches of the external energy. This is described by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 7.15. Daivi hiesha gunamai mama maya durataya. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. The Nitya Baddhas are always conditioned by the external energy, and the Nitya Muktas never come in contact with the external energy. Sometimes an ever-liberated personal associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead descends into this universe just as the Lord descends. Although working for the liberation of conditioned souls, the messenger of the Supreme Lord remains untouched by the material energy. Generally, ever-liberated personalities live in the spiritual world as associates of Lord Krishna, and they are known as Krishna Parishada, associates of the Lord. Their only business is enjoying Lord Krishna's company, and even though such eternally liberated persons come within this material world to serve the Lord's purpose, they enjoy Lord Krishna's company without stoppage. The ever-liberated person who works on Krishna's behalf enjoys Lord Krishna's company through his engagement. Actually, I'm regretting that I said you can come. The pumpkin is very loud. Do you want... You have to cut this also, but this is not so loud. Maybe should we shift the pumpkin out? It's maybe better, huh? Sorry, Bruce. The ever-conditioned soul, provoked by lusty desires to enjoy the material world, is forced to transmigrate from one body to another. Sometimes he is elevated to higher planetary systems, and sometimes he is degraded to hellish planets and subjected to the tribulations of the external energy. Due to being conditioned by the external energy, the conditioned soul within this material world gets two kinds of bodies: a gross material body and a subtle material body composed of mind, intelligence and ego. Due to the gross and subtle bodies, he is subjected to the threefold miseries: adhyatmika, adhibhotika and adhidevika. Miseries arising from the body and mind, other living entities, and natural disturbances caused by demigods from higher planetary systems. The conditioned soul, subjected to the threefold miseries, the threefold material miseries, is ceaselessly kicked by Maya, and this is his disease. If by chance he meets a saintly person who works on Krishna's behalf to deliver conditioned souls, if he agrees to abide by his order, he can gradually approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militang Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Panchakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubheva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. In this way, the conditioned soul becomes the servant of lusty desires, and when these are not fulfilled, he becomes the servant of anger and continues to be kicked by the external energy Maya. Wandering and wandering throughout the universe, he may by chance get the association of a devotee physician whose instructions and hymns make the witch of the external energy flee. The conditioned soul thus gets into touch with devotional service to Lord Krishna, and in this way he can approach nearer and nearer to the Lord. Hare Krishna. So we are reading here from the instructions Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives to Sanatana Goswami, and after hearing about the Sambandha Tattva, we now come to the Abhideya Gyan, the knowledge how to perform devotional service. And here, in these first few verses of the 22nd chapter, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he describes the living entities, and he explains what kind of energy these living entities represent. And he uses the term Vibhinamsa Shakti. So this is called the separated energy of Krishna. And Krishna himself, he expands himself as Amsa, means he also expands, but this Amsa is still a part of Krishna. And the Vibhinamsha, the Jivas, they are also parts, but they are separated. And now in this purport, Prabhupada explains the difference between the two kinds of Jivas. One being the Nitya Mukta, and the other being the Nitya Bada, Nitya conditioned, ever conditioned and ever liberated. And our acharyas, they sometimes, in order to explain this point, they use the analogy of the prison. As we know, if there is a king, he has a whole country under his rule, but then there is also a prison in the kingdom, right? That's the word, in the kingdom. And the kingdom also belongs, the prison also belongs to the kingdom. I really have to get used to everybody's working. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the prison house is also a part of the kingdom, but it's different from the rest of the kingdom. Why? Because those who live in the prison, they are separated from the rest of the kingdom, from the inhabitants of the kingdom. And this is comparable to the spiritual world and the material world. Actually, Krishna is like the king, and he creates the whole manifestation, and then we divide it into the spiritual and the material part. And the material part is like the prison house for those living entities, those jivas, who want to enjoy separately from Krishna. And similarly to those who are imprisoned, which usually are much less than those people who live outside, those living entities who live in this material world, in the prison house of this material world, they are much less. In the scriptures it is said that in the spiritual world we can find 3/4 of all the living entities, and in the material world it's only 1/4. So that shows that actually the normal condition of the living entity is to be liberated and to be in the association of Krishna and to serve him. And like in the kingdom, who creates the prison? Who builds the prison?
King.
The king. It's not somebody else, it's the king who builds the prison, because it's his duty that if there is some living entities who don't fit into society, that they have basically an alternative. And not only an alternative of living, but also a place where they can reform their consciousness. And also Krishna, he's the king, he's the one who built this material world. In order for us to come and enjoy separately, but actually the main purpose of the material world is to reform the consciousness of the living entity. What means to reform? To reform from I am the enjoyer to I am the servant of Krishna. Because that is actually the natural state, the natural consciousness, and that is the reality. But due to being illusioned, the living entity thinks that I am the enjoyer. Prabhupada here in this purport speaks about Maya. And even though the king, he creates the prison house, does he run the prison house himself? No. He put somebody in charge to run the prison house. And similarly also Krishna, he doesn't run the material world himself, because he's happily engaged in his loving pastimes in the spiritual world. So he put somebody in charge of the material world. And that is? Durga, Maya Devi. What is the meaning of Durga? Fort, a prison. So that's where the whole example comes from, that it's actually a prison. And Durga is the prison in charge. She makes sure that whoever is in here doesn't escape. And Prabhupada quotes this word, Daiviyesha gunamaya mama maya durataya. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the 3 modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. So Maya, she's the prison. And like if a prisoner who is in the prison, encaged, it's very, very difficult for him to get out of the prison. Actually, it's impossible. Sometimes maybe we see a movie or we hear in the newspaper how somebody escapes from the prison, but in reality it's almost impossible. And that's what is meant here by this verse, Daiviyesha gunamaya mama maya durataya, that no living entity can get out of this material world. But then the second part of the verse, what does it say?
It's possible to overcome by surrendering to Krishna.
Right. What is the Sanskrit? Mama Maya Durataya. Yes. So Krishna says you cannot come out here, out of this prison house of material world, only if you become a devotee of me, if you surrender to me. Also in the material world, if somebody is in the prison house, there's a reason why he's in the prison house, because he doesn't abide by the rules and by the law of the king. But as soon as he accepts the king as his authority, he can get out again. So we are where? We are in the prison? Or are we in the outside world, in the freedom? We are in the prison, right? Now, in the prison itself, there is another division. Just this morning, I was inspired actually by Prabhupada speaking to me in the bathroom this morning. Prabhupada started the lecture by saying there's two kinds of living entities in the material world. Those are? No. Yes. Daivim and Asurim. Krishna speaks about it in the Bhagavad Gita. So what does that mean? So that actually all of the living entities in the material world, they are prisoners. All of them, they have the mentality of enjoying independently. But now we can divide them into two. One of them, they accept the personality of Godhead. Some of them, they actually accept the king, but some of them completely reject the authority of the king. And one can say that the demigods, or those with the divine nature, they move towards Krishna. They move towards the freedom. Like in the prison, you will always have two kinds of people. Those who are just hopeless case, they will commit crime again and again, and actually if they are in the prison and surrounded by so many other prisoners, then they become much more enthused to commit criminal activities. And you know, there are some documentaries about big prisons in this world where there is a whole mafia inside the prison. So meaning the prisoners again continue with their criminal activities in the prison itself. But then there is always another group of criminals. Those who actually accept that they did something wrong and who want to get out. And what do? They try to reform themselves. And to reform themselves, they take help of some government official. Somebody who comes into the prison, sent by the king, and who will teach them certain things. He will teach them values, law, how to behave, how to conduct. And this person, he's different from the prisoners. We just said there are two kinds of prisoners, those who want to rectify themselves, and then those who just don't want to rectify but just continue performing criminal acts. But then there is the ones who come from outside. They come in the morning and usually in the evening they leave again. They don't have a cell in the prison. They don't have a bed. They don't have a place to stay. They have a place to stay outside. But they come inside to do some work. And Prabhupada also speaks about this person, this Nitya Mukta. Sometimes the Nitya Mukta, he comes into this material world. And who is such a Nitya Mukta who came in this material world? Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, he came into this world and he's not a prisoner like you and me. He's a Nitya Mukta. He's sent by the king. He's sent by Krishna to help those living entities who are willing to reform themselves to come out. I wanted to speak about one thing actually. I kind of jumped that over. I would like to hear from you, when you read the scriptures and you hear eternally conditioned, how you feel? Huh? Very bad, right? Do you also have this experience that when you read that you get a very bad feeling within you and you feel like hopeless and you are actually meant to be here forever? Do you have this experience? And I was questioning, why they use these words, eternally conditioned, because eternal means eternal. It means no beginning and no end. But actually that's only one part of the meaning. Another part is It just wants to make a point for a very, very long time. So it can be understood factually, but it also have a meaning of making a point that it speaks about a very long duration. And if we only read the first statement of this verse, Daiviyesha Gunamai Mamamaya Durateya, then we can easily think that, okay, that's it. I'm a prisoner in the prison house of material world and I will not get out of it. But then the second part, it says, no, you can get out of it. And like in the prison, a prisoner, he will not get out of the prison because he got a sentence, a penalty, and he has to stay there. But if he is completely reformed and he rectified himself, there is no need for him to stay anymore in the prison, but he can go out. So Prabhupada in this purport, he describes that the Nitya Mukta, he comes into this prison house of material world and he will preach to the conditioned living entities and he will tell them, hey, you are in prison, but you are not supposed to be here. You are supposed to be outside in the free world. You should enjoy freedom in the company of the king. And that's when the Reformation process starts. That's when sadhana bhakti starts. And we know that in our scriptures we hear about the seed of Shraddha, that some devotee of the Lord, he travels around the universe and he will plant the seed of bhakti into the heart of the conditioned living entity. That's when it starts. And by this faith, this seed of faith, the living entity actually starts to consider, hey, maybe I should change something in my life. Maybe I should think about a better alternative. And he will go to this person because he can see, wow, here is a person who is completely peaceful and happy and full of good qualities, full of love. And he will start to listen to this person. So he will take sadhu sangha. And this sadhu, this pure devotee of the Lord, he will tell to this living entity how to free himself. So he will tell him, you should do this and you should not do this. This is pleasing to Krishna, this is not pleasing to Krishna. That's how you abide by the law and that's how you break the law. And by these instructions, the jiva will start to follow a certain lifestyle, bhajana kriya. And what is the essence of this lifestyle?
Chanting the holy name.
That's the essence here. The chanting of the holy name is the essence. There's many things the pure devotee of the Lord will instruct. What to eat and what not to eat. How to dress and how not to dress. What to read and what not to read. What to look at and what not to look at. What to hear and what not to hear. No, he will tell so many things. But the essence of all advice is that he will say, chant Hare Krishna. Srila Rupa Goswami explains this point in the Upadeshamrita, verse 8. Tannama rupa charitadi sukirtananu smrityo kramena rasanamanasi niyochya tishtan brachetadανuragi jananugami kalam nayeda kilamityupadesha saram. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way one should reside in Braja, Goloka Vrindavan Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees, who are deeply attached to his devotional service. So, Manu, you said that chanting of the holy name, that's actually the essence. Why?
I once thought there are like 64 limbs of bhakti given by Rupa Goswami, and then he broke them down to four angas, Srimad Bhagavatam, deity worship, sadhusanga and chanting of the holy name, and then he made it to one Eka Anusha Bhakta.
But why?
Why?
Why the chanting? Why not something else?
Because this is the Yuga Dharma.
Why?
Message. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and built this.
Okay. Why? Some other suggestions?
Because it makes us remember Krishna.
Yes, that's the point. He says here, Smrityo, that by chanting the holy name, Hare Krishna, Mataji, the chanting, the holy name is like the seed, and the name reveals everything. It reveals the qualities and the pastimes and the form of the Lord. And so the name is given as the seed of remembrance of Krishna. So that is actually the whole point of the Reformation process. That, like in the material world, if I go to the prison, my Reformation is I have to understand that there is a king, he's the authority, and he gives a law, and I'm supposed to abide by that law. But in the material world, the Reformation means I should understand Krishna is the supreme authority, he is my Lord, and I'm his servant, and by being his servant, I should always meditate about him and his pleasure. That's what is meant by a servant, a true servant. And this is also substantiated in the Puranas. I found two very interesting verses, and one of them is well known. Smartavya satatam vishnur vismartavyo najatuchit sarve vidini shedasyur etayoreva kinkaraha. Krishna is the origin of Lord Vishnu. He should always be remembered and never forgotten at any time. All the rules and prohibitions mentioned in the Shastras should be the servants of these two principles. Very nice verse. But then there is another one I found. This is in the Vishnu Purana, which expresses this point a little bit differently. Sahanistan mahachidram samoha sacha vipramaha yanmuhurtam kshanam vapi vasudevang na chintayet. If even for a moment remembrance of Vasudev is missed, that is the greatest loss, that is the greatest illusion, and that is the greatest anomaly. The spiritual master, he instructs us so many things, like we said, what to eat, what not to eat, etc., what to do. But here we understand the whole point of this is that we should remember Krishna. So we are doing so many things the whole day. We are cutting vegetables, we are cooking for the Sunday feast, we are making garlands, we are making gimmicks, we go and distribute books, we give a lecture, we do management, we do cleaning, we do deity worship, we clean ourselves, we take prasad. But if we do all these things but we don't remember Krishna, what did we just hear? Then it is useless. It's useless. So this we should always remember. Because we are fortunate enough that we, even though we are in the prison house of material existence, and we are very unfortunate in that sense, that somehow or other we wanted to enjoy independently from the Lord, that we met Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, who was sent by the king, by Krishna, he came to inform us about him. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai. Shishi Gornitai Ki Jai. So Srila Prabhupada, he came on the order of Krishna to inform us that, hey, you are not meant to be in this world. You are suffering, but you are eternal, blissful, spiritual, living entity. And you can go back to the spiritual world, back to Krishna, and live with him peacefully and full of bliss. So we got that connection. We are on the path of reformation. But there is a big risk in that whole path. And that is, in the prison, you have different grades of prisoners. You have the third grade prisoners and the second, the first. And what is the difference? The difference is they have different kinds of punishment. If you look at the heavy criminal personalities, they will have heavy restrictions. They will stay alone in a cell, not allowed to go outside, not allowed to see any relatives, nothing. But then, if a prisoner is reformed more or shows to the authorities that actually I'm serious, I want to be better, then they will give us some privilege, like we can go out in the park for a walk once a day. Maybe we get some difference in foodstuffs, we have more variety. Maybe we can even have a television in our cell. So, but what is the problem? That if I start to think that actually now I'm comfortable, now I'm good. And so that's maybe the point I would like to emphasize today, that also all of us, we have come in contact with a pure devotee of the Lord. We have started to practice pure devotional service. And most probably, this is not our first life. Most probably, all of us, we have been doing something before. We have been practicing devotional service. Some, they might come down from the heavenly planets. Some, they come from the place where the rishis perform tapasya. Some from the Himalayas, where yogis practice austerity. Others come from the Brahmavadis who study the scriptures. So many of us, we have some background, you know, wanting to understand the Supreme. So many of us have made a connection with the godly qualities before. Otherwise we could not be here. But to come to the point of understanding the motto of life is back home, back to Godhead. And for this we have to associate with the Nitya Mukta, the Nitya Siddha Mahabhagavat Uttamadhikari Sadhu Guru. It's not possible to get this desire to go back from somebody else. Like in the prison, I can associate with the prisoners who want to reform themselves. But as long as they are not completely reformed, as long as they don't have a life in freedom and they know who is the king and have association with him, it is almost impossible that they can bring me to the point of going out of the prison. However, the government official who comes sent by the king, he's every day outside. He can see the king. He knows what he's doing. He can speak about him. And he is a very practical example for us what it actually means to be liberated. And so that is the whole point, I guess, when the scriptures and the acharyas, they make a very clear, almost black and white distinction of Nitya Mukta, Nitya Baddha, in order to point out to us, hey, you are imprisoned. Okay, you might be a very pious personality. You might even be serving the Lord nicely, but as long as you are under the clutches of Maya, meaning as long as you have a material body, gross and subtle, you are Nitya Baddha. But you can become a liberated person. You can become, you just have to follow the instructions of the pure devotee. So let us remember that point, that we are imprisoned here in this material world, and in order to go back home to Godhead and live a life full of bliss, full of knowledge in the association of Krishna, we have to become a pure devotee. And a pure devotee of the Lord means to always, constantly remember the Lord. And now we are practicing, and most probably we've been practicing before in some previous lives, but we should, and this is also okay, it can continue like this for many more lifetimes, but we should always remember what is the goal of our existence. And we shouldn't get stuck. Now I'm a good person, I abide by the laws. But actually still I'm thinking about my own sense gratification mainly. Maybe now I do it with the thought of, okay, Krishna is the Supreme, and these are his other living entities, and that's his creation. But still, mainly I think about myself, how I can enjoy. So that is actually the godly mentality, that I accept Krishna, but still I want to enjoy independently. But to go back home needs a complete revolution in consciousness to put Krishna in the center, and we come to the side. We see that we are a servant. It's not about what I like, what I want to do, how I see things, how I feel. It's about how Krishna sees things, how he feels, what he likes, what he wants. And as Manu pointed out, this we do by practicing, and the essence of our practice is chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam, kalo nasteva, nasteva, nasteva gatir anyatha. It was not always the chanting, it was not always the dharma of the yuga. In the Satya Yuga it was meditation, meaning by meditation people were able to remember Krishna. They could just sit down by following the Ashtanga Yoga process, and at one point they were able to catch the Lord in their heart. But then how time advanced and the lower modes of material nature became more prominent, people were not able to do so anymore. And so even in the Treta Yuga, what was the process? No, not chanting. Yagyas. So yagya was then the way how to connect to Krishna. Meaning the whole life was based on how can I act to perform sacrifice. Everything they were doing, they were just in meditation about how is this a sacrifice? How can I offer this to Krishna? Of course, we always have this example of the fire sacrifice, but actually it's a much more broad understanding that the whole life became a sacrifice, and the fire sacrifice was like the heart of this Yuga Dharma. But it involved everything. Every sphere of the life became a part of the sacrifice. But then the time advanced and they were not even able to do that. And then what did Krishna introduce? Deity worship, Archa Vigraha, Seva. So then he gave the form of the Lord. Now they needed something for their eyes, you know. Now I want to see the Lord, I cannot see the Lord. So then it became the deity worship. But again, it's not only deity worship when I stand on the altar. No, the whole life was focused on deity worship. Everything came to culmination in deity worship. That's how they remembered Krishna throughout their lives. But then Kali Yuga came, and even deity worship was not possible. And then Krishna gave the chanting of the holy name when he appeared as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Hare Krishna. Yes. If you like, I can stop here, and if somebody would want to add or ask something, and otherwise I can speak a little bit more, because we still have vegetables. Yes, Lucas.
Can you maybe elaborate a little bit? So for this age, the Buddha Dharma is Sankirtan. So how does it relate to chanting alone and chanting together? Is it the same if you chant alone, there's also a lot of benefit, or is it really like Sankirtan? Because you were saying in previous ages you always meditate on this, so how you always meditate on Sankirtan? How can you not only do it for yourself?
In essence, let me try to say what I understood. And it might be not complete or perfect, and we can also hear from other devotees. But what I understood is that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced the chanting of the holy names as the means of making spiritual advancement and even attaining perfection. And it is called Sankirtan. Now Sankirtan, of course, for those who study Sanskrit a bit, it basically, the root of the word is kirti, to glorify. And then san means the complete glorification of the Lord, the perfect glorification of the Lord. And I guess that leaves also some room for interpretation, and it is not black and white, and it is also individual. For example, Haridas Thakur, who is the Namacharya, he just chanted japa all day long. Luki, no? Haridas Thakur, he just chanted japa all day long. And for him, apparently, that was sufficient to remember Krishna always and deepen that relationship. But then there is also the congregational chanting, kirtan, and then it comes to my mind how Indra Prabhu, he said, it is like when you go to the physician, you have a disease, then he will give you two things. He will give you actually the diet and the medicine, that's one thing, but he said he will give you the medicine in two forms. He will give you the injection and he will give you the pills. And the pills, they are meant to control the disease so that it doesn't break out, and the injection is meant to completely eradicate the disease. And he was saying the japa is like the pills. You know, you take it so that your disease is under control. And then the Harinam Sankirtan, the chanting in the congregation, it is the injection which will cure you completely. But then Srila Prabhupada, and that's something quite amazing. I was just also reading in Bhagavatam, Prabhupada describes in many purports how initially Krishna, he gave the Chatur Shloki to, actually the Chatur Shloki came to Brahma and then he spoke them, and from the Chatur Shloki the whole Bhagavatam unfolded. And he was speaking about how the disciplic succession, it expands the knowledge. Means it's the same knowledge, but it expands. And also we can see actually Srila Prabhupada, for example, he expanded the Sankirtan. He was saying how book distribution is also Sankirtan. And the whole service in the temple is also Sankirtan. But then Prabhupada also said we should always chant. Everything we do, we should chant within ourselves Hare Krishna.
You said deity worship is also
Yeah, the point is that every service we have, I think Bhaktivinoda Thakur spoke about it, it is only successful if you connect it with the holy name.
So would you say deity worship is Sankirtan because it's part of the mission of spreading the holy name?
I mean, again, the meaning of Sankirtan means complete glorification of the Lord. It means you use whatever you can to glorify Him. So this can be done by worshipping the deity as well. Because we dress the deities in nice clothes, we use flowers, and we do so many things. But it always should give an impetus to actually do kirtan, to glorify. So when we look at the deities, it should inspire us to chant the glories of the Lord, which in essence is the name. The name is the essence of the Lord's glories, because in the name everything is present. And so when we do we also do fire sacrifice. Also the fire sacrifice can give us an impetus to chant the holy name. Yeah, Mataji, you wanted to say something?
To say that Samyak Sankirtana, Samyak, the first part of this word, one of this meaning is together, and even this meaning emphasizes jealous one. So deity worship, we together glorify Krishna, and but the angi of the worship is holy name, is chanting holy name.
Yes.
Angi is the
name. The back.
back, yes, and the anga is part of body, and angi is chanting. Without chanting, the worship became useless.
Yeah, sure.
One question is like also related to deity worship, because these days we are having Diwali time, and a lot of us, including me, we are used to this Lakshmi Pujan at our house. And sometimes being a devotee, like connected with ISKCON, I have a struggle. Like I have Lakshmi Pujan at my home and my deity is up, and then I think, oh God, it's written in the scriptures, demigod worship we should not do. But I still do, thinking that Lakshmi Ji is like, will help me to reach Krishna. I mean, I try to satisfy my thought, but can you...
But Lakshmi is not a demigod.
Yes, Lakshmi is not a demigod.
But like, Guruji, like in Lakshmi Pujan, it's Lakshmi, Saraswati, Ganesh, all on the
Also depends.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, Lakshmi is not a demigod, but then of course how you worship. Actually Vaishnavas sometimes worship demigods. Shiva, we know in Bhagavatam, the Brijbasis, they worship Shiva, they worship Katyayani. Then I was just reading Chaitanya Mangal, and Lochandas Thakur, he worships Ganesh. But they do it as a means to serve Krishna.
Yes.
So, and Lakshmi is the energy of the Lord. So, but then those who worship Lakshmi for their own benefit, actually it's not Lakshmi anymore. It's not Lakshmi Puja as such, because like Ravan, when he wanted to capture Sita and he captured her, it was not Sita anymore. It was an illusory form of Sita. Because Lakshmi belongs to the Lord. He only serves the Lord. So Lakshmi comes when we serve the Lord. That's why when we have money we say Lakshmi. But if we don't use it for Krishna, it's not Lakshmi.